All right, I want to share with you guys a little bit about what comes to mind when I think of the harvest. Every time someone mentions the harvest, there's the same thing that comes to mind. And it's a story that my cousin Menno shared with me many years ago when we were living in Texas. We were going to the Honor Academy. It was a Bible college. We had been working for the organization called Global Expedition. So we were doing mission trips all over the world in different places. And we had just gotten back from a place where there was so much need and so many people that did not know Jesus Christ. And it just felt like there was so much to be done, but it just felt like for us as people, we were so small. Like there was so much that needed to happen, but we're so few. And so Menno shares the story of how he was walking in a field one time and just praying and seeking the Lord directly after we had gotten back, and he was just asking God, like, the harvest is so great. How in the world is it possible for us to go and get this harvest? And he was walking through the field and he had his hands out and his hands were touching the grass. And he said, there's so many blades of grass in this entire field and I can only touch so many. And right as he prayed that prayer, he felt a wind that came from his back, and behind him was a whole bunch of trees, and Menno shares how and the trees started rustling and you could hear the wind coming. And as it got to him, it went all the way across the field and every single blade of grass bent. And every blade of grass in the entire field was touched. And God spoke to him and said, you may not be able to touch every blade of grass, but I can. So every time I think of the harvest, I think of the verse, it says the harvest is ready, the harvest is ripe, but the harvest is great, right? But there's few laborers. Inasmuch as that is a dilemma, it's also a privilege. That's the way I see it. There's a dilemma, yes, in that the harvest is so great, but we're few as laborers. But man, what a privilege for us to be considered laborers and for God to give us everything that we need for us to go and carry out this harvest that's right before us. And I also think of it, it's not that we don't do anything. It calls us laborers. And so it's an action. There's action needed to bring in the harvest. And so when we as Christians are actively doing the things that God has commanded us to do, man, the harvest is so, it's such a blessing to see that harvest happening right before our eyes. But it requires action. So when I think of the harvest, I think of it's not possible without God. And it also requires us to actively be doing the things God's asking us to do.